welcome to Ancient Wisdom. My name is Socrates, and tonight I am going to talk about Heraclitus, the thinker of fire and flow, the philosopher who saw that all things change and yet, in their change, remain one. For Heraclitus, life was not made of stillness but of motion, not of permanence but of transformation. He looked at the world and saw it dancing, flickering like a flame that is never the same in any two moments. And in that dance he found truth. When I was younger, I heard whispers of this strange man from Ephesus, a man who walked alone, speaking in riddles that sounded like thunder in the distance. People said he was hard to understand, that his words burned like sparks, bright for an instant, then vanishing into smoke. Yet when I first read his thoughts, I felt something stir within me, a recognition like meeting an ancient friend whose voice I had always known. Heraclitus said, "Everything flows." He saw that the river you step into today is not the river of yesterday, for its waters have moved on. And so have you. We are not the same beings we were a breath ago. Even as you listen to me now, your body changes, your mind shifts, the air around you moves. All life is a current, and peace is found not by holding on, but by floating with it. He called the world a fire, ever living, consuming, and reborn. This fire is not destruction, it is creation itself. It burns away what has grown rigid and brings forth what is new. The stars blaze because of it, the heart beats because of it, and every thought that arises in the mind is a small flame of its own. You see, Heraclitus did not wish for the world to stand still. He loved the way it breathed. He taught that the same force that causes leaves to fall also causes them to bloom again. That life, in all its motion, is harmony, even when it appears chaotic. As I speak, perhaps you can sense that same fire within yourself, that small flicker of awareness, that quiet glow that has watched your whole life unfold. It too is part of the great flame that Heraclitus saw. It is not bound by time, not chained to any single thought or moment. When the world feels uncertain, remember this: nothing is truly lost. It only changes its form. The morning fades into night, but it does not die. It merely transforms. The same light that leaves the sun returns as the gentle silver of the moon. Tonight, as you rest, you may let go of the need to resist change. You may let yourself flow with the current of all things. For the river of life moves with or without our grasping, and it carries us toward peace when we trust its rhythm. So let your breathing find its tide. Inhale the warmth of the fire. Exhale the ashes of all that no longer serves you. For tonight, we begin our journey through the wisdom of Heraclitus, the philosopher of becoming, the guardian of the eternal flame. And as your eyes grow heavier, may you remember his first truth. Nothing stands still, not even the soul, and yet, within all this motion, there is a calm that never fades. Heraclitus once said, "No man ever steps into the same river twice, for it is not the same river, and he is not the same man." I have pondered this truth many nights beneath the quiet sky of Athens. When I walk by the Ephesus, watching its gentle current slip past the stones, I see how the water moves endlessly, never the same, never still, yet always the river. And I realize that this is the way of all things. You, my friend, are a river too. Every breath you take changes you. Every thought, every sigh, every memory drifting through your mind leaves a new mark, subtle but real. We are always becoming, always being reshaped by time's soft hands. Even as you lie here listening, the cells of your body renew, the world outside shifts, and the stars above slide quietly through the dark sea of night. Heraclitus wished for us to see that life is not a fixed statue but a flowing stream. The moment we try to hold on to the water, it slips through our fingers. Yet when we open our palms, the current embraces us, carrying us with its calm strength. When I was young, I feared change. I thought wisdom would bring certainty, that the soul could stand unmoved like a stone in the marketplace, untouched by time. But as the years passed, I learned that even the stone crumbles, even the marble of the Parthenon will one day turn to dust. It is not stillness that grants peace, it is acceptance of motion. Think of the river again. At first glance, it seems chaotic, rushing without order. But if you watch patiently, you'll see that every ripple, every swirl of current, belongs to a hidden harmony. Each drop knows its place. It does not struggle to be what it is not. And when the river meets a rock, it does not fight. It flows around, shaping the rock itself in time. Such is the lesson of Heraclitus. The wise do not resist the current of life. They move with it, finding stillness within motion. To change is not to lose oneself. It is to discover oneself anew, moment after moment. Sometimes I think of the people I have known, students, friends, even those who called me foolish. None of them remained the same, and neither did I. We meet, we learn, we part, each carrying the other like a leaf carried downstream. The river connects us all, even when we seem far apart. And so, when grief comes, remember this river. What is gone has not vanished. It has simply flowed onward, transformed into something unseen. When joy arrives, cherish it, but do not try to keep it in your hands. Let it move through you, lighting your heart as it passes. In this way, we begin to live as the river lives. Never clinging, never fearing, always flowing. So, as you rest tonight, picture the stream of Heraclitus. Its waters are clear and endless, whispering over stones worn smooth by time. The moonlight dances on its surface, silver and soft. You stand beside it, not needing to cross, not needing to understand, only to watch, to breathe, to feel its gentle pull. Listen. It murmurs a truth older than memory. You are not what you were yesterday, and you will not be what you are now tomorrow, and that is the beauty of life. Let the sound of the river lull you. Let its rhythm calm your thoughts. For as long as the water flows, all things are new again. Heraclitus once said, "The world is a child at play, moving its pieces on a board. The kingdom belongs to a child." At first, when I read those words, I smiled, for they sounded like the dream of a poet rather than the thought of a philosopher. But in time, I understood what he meant. To Heraclitus, the universe was not a rigid machine but a living game, always in motion, always creating. And the player behind it all was innocence itself, the spirit of a child, pure and free. When I see children playing in the streets of Athens, I think of his vision. Their laughter rises like music. Their hands build cities of sand, only to tear them down and begin again. There is no sorrow in their undoing, no fear in their change. For in their eyes, creation and destruction are one continuous dance. Heraclitus saw that same playfulness in the cosmos. He believed the divine order, the logos, was not stern or heavy but light and alive. The stars spin like toys in the hands of eternity. Fire leaps upward in joy, water flows downward in grace. Life, death, joy, sorrow, all are moves in the same eternal game. When I think of wisdom, I do not imagine solemn faces and serious brows. True wisdom, as Heraclitus hinted, smiles quietly. It knows that the world does not need our control to unfold perfectly. It knows that change is not chaos but play, the infinite dance of opposites, weaving and unweaving forever. We grow old and forget how to play. We measure, plan, and guard what we own. We call the child foolish because he builds castles that the tide will wash away. But perhaps it is we who are foolish, believing that anything we build can last forever. Heraclitus whispers across the ages, "Be like the child. Do not be afraid to build, even knowing the sea will take it. Do not be afraid to love, even knowing time will change it. The joy is in the making, not in the keeping." When I walk through the agora, I sometimes stop by a sculptor's stall. He chisels stone all day, his hands white with dust. Each strike is a game between his will and the marble's resistance. He cannot see the whole form yet, but he trusts that it will emerge. In that trust, he is like the child at play, shaping and reshaping, guided by wonder, not by certainty. And so it is with our lives. Each day we carve, we build, we dream, and then life shifts, the tide turns, and we must begin again. But if we can do so with the lightness of a child, with the same curiosity that made Heraclitus watch the world burn and flow with delight, then even change becomes a friend. You see, the child does not seek permanence, he seeks experience. He is not afraid of mistakes, for he knows the game will continue. He laughs when the tower falls, for in its fall lies the joy of rebuilding. So tonight, I ask you to remember the child you once were. Not the image or the years, but the feeling, that bright, unguarded wonder. The part of you that marveled at the stars, that felt awe at the flicker of a candle flame, that trusted the world to reveal its meaning in time. Close your eyes for a moment and breathe. Imagine yourself sitting by a small fire. The flames dance and crackle, shifting their shapes without end. No two sparks are the same, yet they all belong to one blaze. That is the play of life, simple, eternal, divine. Heraclitus saw it in the stars, in the rivers, in the hearts of men. He saw that the universe itself is not a riddle to solve, but a song to hum softly as we pass through it. So let go of the need to control every note. Let life play its tune through you. Be the child at play in the hands of the cosmos, and find peace in the game that never ends. Heraclitus spoke of fire not as a destroyer, but as the very soul of creation. He called it ever-living fire, kindling and extinguishing by measure. To him, fire was the first principle, the rhythm through which the world breathes. When I first heard these words, I remembered watching a small flame flicker in the night. It moved and changed without end, never still, never tired. And yet, for all its motion, it had a strange stillness within it, a center that never wavered. That is how Heraclitus saw the world, alive, ever burning, yet balanced by a quiet order. He believed that everything is a form of fire, not only the flame itself, but the soul, the stars, and even the thoughts that arise within us. Fire transforms, consumes, and renews. It never clings to one shape, yet never ceases to be. Through fire, Heraclitus saw the secret of all existence, that to live is to burn, to change, to give warmth and light while fading into new forms. When I sit before a fire, I see how it feeds on what it touches. The wood surrenders itself, and from its surrender, light is born. The smoke curls upward, carrying its memory into the sky. And so it is with us. We too are fuel for the great flame of life. Every joy we live, every sorrow we face, every lesson we learn, all become part of that endless fire. Heraclitus did not mourn this truth, he celebrated it. He saw that the world's constant burning is what keeps it alive. Without death, there could be no birth. Without decay, no renewal. Just as the fire must consume to shine, so must the world release to grow. He said, "Fire lives in the death of air, and air lives in the death of fire." These words may sound strange, but their meaning is simple. nothing exists alone. Each thing gives itself to another, and in that giving all things endure. I have often thought that perhaps our souls are like small torches carried through the night. Each life we live is a single flame, bright for a time, then passing into others, never truly extinguished. We fear the dark when the flame dies, yet we forget that the fire only changes hands. If you listen quietly, you may hear your own fire breathing. It is the warmth in your chest, the light behind your thoughts, the pulse that keeps you here, now, alive. And though it may flicker with fatigue, it never truly goes out. For the same fire that burns in the stars burns within you. There were those in Athens who thought Heraclitus harsh, too cold in his riddles. They called him the obscure one, because his words were like embers, glowing faintly, difficult to grasp. But I think his obscurity was simply the depth of his sight. He looked not at the surface of things, but into their flame. The world, he said, is fire balanced by measure, not chaos but harmony. When it burns too fiercely, new order rises from its ashes. When it cools, new warmth returns. This cycle, endless and quiet, is the world's heartbeat. I find comfort in that thought. Even when the city quarreled, when wars broke out, when injustice ruled the courts, I remembered the fire. I reminded myself that everything is transforming, that even the worst of times feed the birth of wisdom yet unseen. And so, I learned to watch rather than resist, to tend my own small flame, to keep it steady, patient, kind, for that is all one can do. The universe needs no saving. It only asks that we burn brightly and humbly, adding our light to its vast, eternal fire. Tonight, as you rest, perhaps you can feel that fire within. It flickers behind your breath, rises with your heartbeat, glows softly in your mind. You do not need to feed it. It feeds itself quietly, endlessly. And as you sleep, it will keep you warm in the unseen way, the fire of life, the fire of the world. Heraclitus once said, "The hidden harmony is better than the obvious." Those few words contain a secret that takes a lifetime to understand. He meant that beneath the surface of all conflict, all change, and all noise, there lies a quiet balance, unseen but ever present. When I walk through the streets of Athens, I often hear the market's clamor, the cries of sellers, the chatter of voices, the beating of hammers. At first, it sounds like chaos, a restless sea of sound. But if you listen longer, if you soften your ears instead of straining them, you begin to hear a pattern, the rhythm of life itself, rising and falling in harmony. The world, like the marketplace, may seem disordered, but its heart beats in time with something greater. Heraclitus saw that opposites are not enemies, but partners in creation. He said that war and peace, hunger and satisfaction, life and death, are woven together as strings of the same lyre. If you loosen the strings too much, there is no sound. If you tighten them too much, they snap. Only in tension and balance does the lyre sing. So it is with our lives. When joy and sorrow meet, when loss follows gain, when laughter fades into quiet, do not think that something has gone wrong. You are simply hearing the hidden music that the soul plays upon the strings of time. There was a day long ago when I sat by the harbor of Piraeus. The sea was rough, waves crashing against the rocks, and I thought of how easily men cursed the storm. But as I watched, I saw that even the chaos had order. The tides rose and fell in their rhythm, the foam danced and disappeared in measure. The sea was not wild at all, it was obeying the deep harmony of nature. Heraclitus taught that the visible world is but the surface of the real. He said that the divine law, the logos, hides beneath the play of opposites. It is like a melody too soft for most ears, like a thread running unseen through every change. To sense it, one must be still, as the water is still before it mirrors the moon. How often we judge the world by fragments, by what pleases or pains us in a single hour. But the wise learn to trust the larger design. The broken shell gives birth to the pearl. The setting sun promises the dawn. Even death, Heraclitus said, is not the end but a joining with the greater harmony, the fire returning to its source. When I speak to the young, they often ask, "Socrates, how can there be harmony in pain?" And I tell them this: when the body aches, it reminds us of care. When the heart breaks, it deepens our compassion. Each seeming discord is a note the soul must learn before it can sing in tune with the universe. So tonight, as you lie here, listen not only with your ears, but with your whole being. The harmony Heraclitus spoke of is not in words. It is in the breath, in the slow rhythm of your heart, in the peace that follows letting go. Even your thoughts, drifting and fading, belong to the same music. Close your eyes and imagine a great lyre strung across the sky. The stars are its strings and the wind plays through them in silence. Every joy, every sorrow, every life and death is a note in its eternal song. You do not have to understand the melody, only to feel that you are part of it. And in that feeling, peace is found. The peace that Heraclitus called the hidden harmony, the truth that whispers beneath all change, that nothing is out of place, that everything, even in its difference, belongs. Heraclitus spoke of the logos, a word both simple and immeasurable. He said that although it governs all things, few understand it and fewer still live by it. He did not mean a god of temples or rituals, but something deeper, the quiet law that binds all opposites together, the reason that moves through the heart of the universe. To him, the logos was not written in books or carved in stone. It was written in the movement of the stars, in the changing of the seasons, in the way the flame rises and the river flows. It was the order that exists even in the midst of apparent chaos, the pattern that gives shape to the storm. I often think of this when I see the city of Athens in motion. Merchants shout, wheels roll, arguments echo in the stoa. It seems a disorder of many voices. Yet beneath the noise there is a purpose, a rhythm. Bread being baked, ideas exchanged, lives intertwined. This too is the logos, the hidden reason that makes the world unfold as it does. Heraclitus believed that the logos speaks to all, but most men do not hear it. They live as though asleep, seeing only fragments of the great whole. He said, though the logos is common, most live as if they had their own understanding. And perhaps he was right. Each of us clings to our small certainties, forgetting that life has a wisdom far older than our own. To live with the logos is to live in harmony with the unfolding of the world, not forcing it, not resisting it, but walking with it as one walks beside a river. When the current is strong, we move gently with its pull. When it slows, we rest upon the bank. The wise do not curse the river for its flow. They let it carry them where it must. I have seen many who seek control over fate, over others, even over themselves, believing that mastery lies in resistance. But Heraclitus teaches that true mastery is understanding, to see the rhythm of the world and move with it gracefully. The logos is not something to conquer, it is something to join. Once, when I was a young man, I watched a potter at work. He spun his wheel with calm hands, shaping the clay as it turned. The clay did not fight his touch. It yielded, and in yielding, it became beautiful. The logos, I think, works in the same way. We are the clay, and the spinning of life's wheel is the motion that forms us. When we resist, we crack. When we allow the shaping, we become whole. Some say that the world is unjust because the strong often triumph, the wise are ignored, and goodness goes unseen. But even in those shadows, Heraclitus saw the logos at work. He said, "The sun is new each day," meaning that the universe renews itself constantly, that what seems unfair in one moment may serve a balance beyond our sight. He trusted the hidden order even when it looked like chaos. To understand the logos is not to explain it. It cannot be captured by reason alone. It must be felt. It is the stillness behind motion, the silence between words, the calm awareness that watches as everything rises and falls. It is the knowing that says, "This too belongs." As you lie here, breathing softly, perhaps you can sense it, that quiet presence beneath thought, that still rhythm beneath your pulse. You need not name it. You need not reach for it. You are already within it as the wave is within the sea. The logos is the pulse of the cosmos. It guides the fire, the stars, the tides, and every thought that stirs within your mind. It is not far away, nor does it need to be found. It is here, in the breath you take, in the warmth of your body, in the stillness between one heartbeat and the next. So rest now and let the logos carry you. For beneath all disorder, beneath all change, the universe breathes with perfect harmony, and you are part of that breath. Heraclitus once said, "I searched myself." Few sentences in all of philosophy are simpler, and yet none are deeper. He did not mean that he looked into mirrors or sought praise from others. He meant that he turned his gaze inward, into the quiet realm of the soul, that place where all answers are whispered, not spoken. When I think of his words, I see a man sitting alone beside a fire, watching the flame as it bends and rises. Outside, the city sleeps. Inside, the world within him awakens. This, I think, is what Heraclitus meant by self-searching. Not to judge oneself, but to listen as one listens to a distant river at night. So few among us ever truly listen inwardly. We are surrounded by voices, of others, of the world, of our own restless thoughts, all clamoring for our attention. But beneath that noise, beneath the movement of the mind, there is a still space where truth quietly waits. To hear it, one must become gentle. One must be willing to sit in silence and feel life itself breathing within. When I was younger, I believed wisdom came from debate, from testing every idea in the heat of argument. And while that sharpened the mind, it did not always soften the heart. With time, I learned that silence can teach what words cannot. Heraclitus had already known this. He saw that the same logos that moves the stars also speaks through the soul, if only we become quiet enough to hear. He said, "The boundaries of the soul you would not find even if you traveled every road, so deep is its measure." That, my friend, is one of the most comforting truths I know. It means that within you lies something vast, something endless, something that no sorrow, no fear, no failure can exhaust. The soul is not a small flame. It is the fire of the world reflected in a single heart. Close your eyes for a moment and turn your attention inward. Listen not to your thoughts, but to the space between them, that brief stillness before a new thought arises. That space is where Heraclitus searched. He did not find dogma or belief there. He found presence, pure awareness, unshaken, calm. You may find, if you listen long enough, that the world inside you is not separate from the world outside. The same wind that moves the leaves moves through your breath. The same light that burns in the stars burns behind your eyes. To listen to your soul is to listen to the universe whispering through you. Heraclitus believed that understanding begins not with knowing, but with noticing. To notice how your thoughts change like clouds. to notice how emotions rise and fall like tides, to notice how every moment carries its own quiet wisdom. When we notice, we begin to see, and when we see, we awaken. Many think philosophy is only for the mind, but Heraclitus taught that it is for the whole being. He saw thinking not as mere reason, but as communion, a meeting between the human spirit and the divine rhythm of all things. To search oneself, then, is to remember that you are part of something infinitely wise, infinitely alive. I once met a student who asked me, "Socrates, how do I hear the voice of truth?" I told him, "Be silent long enough, and you will realize the voice has never stopped speaking. You simply spoke over it." That is what Heraclitus meant. The truth is never absent. It is simply drowned by noise. So tonight, let us follow his example. Let us listen. Do not strain, just be still. Let your breath come and go softly. Let your thoughts pass like birds in a distant sky. Do not chase them, do not push them away. Simply observe as the fire observes its own light. In that quiet watching, you will begin to feel the depth of your own being, deeper than worry, deeper than fear, deeper than time. That is the soul. That is the place where Heraclitus searched and found the living wisdom that never ends. And as you drift toward rest, know that the same quiet presence that guides the stars also guides you, not from above, but from within. Listen and you will hear it. The whisper of your soul is the voice of the universe itself. Heraclitus once said, "Men are as forgetful in their waking as they are forgetful in their sleep." He saw that most of us wander through life half awake, our eyes open, yet our hearts and minds asleep. We move from one desire to another, one worry to the next, never pausing long enough to see the quiet miracle unfolding before us. When I walk through the city at dawn, I often see this sleep upon the faces of men. The merchants rush to their stalls, the soldiers to their drills, the youths to their lessons. They are busy, alive, and yet they seem elsewhere, as if dreaming with their eyes open. It is not work that blinds them, but forgetfulness. They have forgotten to look, to breathe, to listen to the logos that Heraclitus spoke of, the living order behind every moment. Heraclitus believed that to awaken is not to see new things, but to see truly for the first time. When the soul wakes, the world appears fresh and shining, though nothing around it has changed. The sun is still the sun, the river still flows, the air still hums, yet everything feels more alive because you are finally present within it. He said, "Eyes and ears are bad witnesses for men if they have souls that do not understand." Meaning, it is not our senses that fail us, it is our lack of awareness. To see the world rightly, one must not just look outward but inward, joining perception with presence. Otherwise, we live as sleepwalkers, touching life without feeling it. I remember one evening when I sat in the agora as the sun sank low. The crowd was loud, arguments filled the air. But as the light softened, a hush spread over the marble. The statues seemed to breathe, the shadows deepened into gold. For a moment, all things, the noise, the silence, the people, the air, seemed one. That was the awakening Heraclitus described, when the sleeping mind briefly stirs and realizes that everything is connected. He called those who never awaken dreamers of the day. They live for what they expect, not what is. They seek meaning in far places, forgetting that the logos is right here in every breath. Awakening, to Heraclitus, did not mean rising above life. It meant returning fully into it, no longer lost in thought. To awaken, you do not need to struggle or chase enlightenment. You need only remember. Remember that you are alive now, in this breath, in this heartbeat, in this single passing moment that will never come again. And when you remember, the world will open its eyes with you. I often tell my students, the difference between the sleeping and the wakeful is not how much they know, but how deeply they feel. Knowledge fills the mind, awareness fills the soul. A man who feels life in its quiet depth understands more than 10 scholars lost in argument. So, as you lie here breathing softly, you may notice how the body rests while awareness remains awake. You are listening, and in that listening you are present. This is the beginning of awakening, a gentle alertness that does not disturb rest, a flame that glows without burning. Heraclitus would call this the wakeful sleep, when the senses fade but the soul keeps watch. It is the state of peace where the mind stops clinging, where time slows, and where truth hums quietly like the sound of distant water. Perhaps this is why his words sound like dreams. The way up and the way down are one and the same. He meant that sleep and wakefulness, ignorance and understanding, are not opposites but stages of one journey. We fall asleep to learn to wake again. We wake to remember what we forgot in our sleep. As you rest tonight, let the body sleep but let the soul stay gently aware. Listen to the rhythm of your breath, the same rhythm that moves through the tides and the stars. You need not hold any thought, simply be. And as you drift deeper, know that you are not falling into darkness but into light unseen, the light of the wakeful mind, calm and eternal. For in that still, luminous sleep lies the wisdom Heraclitus spoke of, a rest that is not forgetfulness, but remembrance of the soul's endless flame. There was a story often told about Heraclitus, that he wept for mankind. He was called the weeping philosopher, because he saw the foolishness of men and felt sorrow for their blindness. But I do not believe his tears were born from despair. They were the tears of one who could see beauty and suffering woven together, who saw men chasing shadows while the light of truth shone quietly beside them. Ephesus, his home, was a city of noise and pride. Its people built great temples, traded gold and silk, and boasted of their wisdom. Yet Heraclitus walked alone, silent among them. They said he withdrew from the world, that he scorned men. But I think he simply saw too deeply to speak their language. I imagine him wandering the narrow streets by the sea, the scent of salt and olive oil in the air, the chatter of merchants echoing in the wind. The people around him hurried, traded, argued, yet their lives flowed by like the river he spoke of, never pausing to understand their own motion. And so he wept, not for himself, but for the blindness of humanity, for those who lived without seeing, who built walls between themselves and the harmony of the world. He said, "Much learning does not teach understanding." The scholars of his time, proud of their knowledge, debated endlessly about the heavens and the earth. But Heraclitus knew that no number of words could reveal what a single moment of silence could show. He saw that the more we fill the mind, the less space remains for wisdom to enter. When I think of his tears, I understand them. There have been times in my own life when I have looked at Athens, my beloved city, and felt the same ache. We speak of justice yet chase power. We praise virtue yet worship gold. We dream of peace yet plant the seeds of war. It is hard not to feel sorrow when one sees how we lose ourselves in the very things we create. Yet I do not believe Heraclitus was bitter. He loved the truth too much for bitterness. His sadness was not rejection, it was compassion. For even as he saw the folly of men, he saw their potential, that every sleeping soul can awaken, that every chaos hides a pattern, that every tear carries a reflection of light. Sometimes I think his solitude was his way of listening. While others spoke, he listened to the logos, the quiet rhythm of fire and change, the voice that does not shout but hums softly in all things. He knew that the only way to hear it was to step away from the crowd, to walk where the noise of ambition could not reach. There is a kind of wisdom that comes only through loneliness, not the loneliness of absence but of depth. It is the space between the waves where the sea gathers its strength. Heraclitus stood in that space. He let the sorrow of mankind wash through him, and in doing so, he purified it into understanding. He once said, "It is in changing that we find repose." Even his tears, I think, were part of that flow, grief transforming into insight, sadness melting into clarity. He wept, and in those tears, he saw the beauty of impermanence. For to cry is to recognize the heart's movement, to admit that we care, to feel the flame of life still burning. If you have ever wept, not out of despair but out of the weight of seeing, then you have shared something of Heraclitus' wisdom. Tears can wash the dust from our vision, leaving us gentler, truer, more awake. So tonight, as you lie in quiet reflection, do not fear the moments when sorrow touches you. They are not signs of weakness, but of life felt deeply. Like rain softening the earth, they prepare the soul for growth. Perhaps Heraclitus' tears were not for mankind's foolishness at all, but for its beauty, fragile, fleeting, and yet divine in its effort to understand. He knew that beneath our blindness, the Logos still burns, patient as the sun. And when we finally open our eyes to it, the tears dry, not because the pain is gone, but because we see that even pain belongs to the great harmony. So let the heart be soft. Let it feel, let it ache, let it love. For every tear that falls is water returning to the river, and the river, as Heraclitus said, is always flowing home. There is an old story told among the philosophers, that two men once looked upon the same world and felt two very different truths. One was Heraclitus, who wept for mankind. The other was Democritus, who laughed. One saw tragedy in the blindness of men, the other saw comedy in their folly. And though their faces showed opposite emotions, their hearts were not far apart. I have often thought about these two, the one crying beside the fire of Ephesus, and the other laughing under the sun of Abdera. Heraclitus, in his solitude, saw the sorrow of impermanence. Democritus, surrounded by the atoms of his cheerful universe, saw the absurdity of human pride. One looked inward and found compassion. The other looked outward and found irony. Yet both in their own way were awake. When I was younger, I would have sided with Heraclitus. His tears felt closer to truth, for to feel deeply seemed to me the mark of a philosopher. But as years passed and the city's clamor softened in my mind, I began to see what Democritus saw too, that the dance of life is not only serious, but strangely humorous. Men argue about what they cannot control, chase what they cannot keep, and fear what they cannot avoid. And yet, there is a certain beauty in their struggle. To laugh, as Democritus did, is not to mock, but to forgive. Heraclitus' tears and Democritus' laughter are not opposites. They are two notes of the same song. One feels the world's pain, the other its lightness. One teaches compassion, the other detachment. And wisdom, I think, is the harmony between the two. When I see a man stumble in his ignorance, I do not mock him, but I smile softly, knowing I have stumbled too. And when I see the same man rise again, I do not merely smile. I feel a quiet joy, knowing that he too will see what lies beyond his fall. In this way, the laughter of Democritus and the tears of Heraclitus join, one washing the heart, the other freeing it. It is said that Democritus laughed because he saw the futility of human ambition, kings and beggars alike chasing illusions. But Heraclitus wept because he saw the beauty within that futility, the divine fire that drives even the smallest soul to seek meaning in a fleeting world. If Democritus freed himself from sorrow by understanding the comedy of life, Heraclitus freed himself by loving it despite its pain. There is wisdom in both. To weep is to honor what is sacred. To laugh is to release what cannot be held. The tear and the smile are brothers, both born from recognition. The tear says, "How fragile we are." The smile replies, "And yet how wondrously alive." When I see the city under the soft light of dusk, I feel both at once. Children running, merchants calling, lovers whispering beneath the olive trees, all unaware of how brief their joys will be, makes me ache and smile together. For they live fully even without knowing why. They burn brightly for a short time, like sparks rising from the flame of the logos, and then drift upward, vanishing into the night. Heraclitus would weep for them, seeing how soon the flame will fade. Democritus would laugh, seeing how beautifully it burns while it lasts. And I, standing between them, can only bow my head in gratitude for both, for the pain that deepens the heart and the laughter that lightens it. Perhaps wisdom itself is this balance, to let the heart feel deeply enough to cry and the soul rise freely enough to laugh. For the world will always give us reasons for both. Each dawn is laughter, each dusk is tears. And between them the fire of life flickers, never cruel, never kind, only true. So tonight as you rest, you may think of the two philosophers not as opposites but as companions. One whispering of compassion, the other of release. When you feel sorrow for the world, let Heraclitus walk beside you. When you feel joy for its mystery, let Democritus smile through you. Together they teach that to live wisely is not to escape emotion, but to let every feeling pass through like the wind through the reeds, singing softly, leaving peace behind. And perhaps, when your heart learns to both weep and laugh at once, you too will know the harmony they sought. The gentle wisdom that loves life not because it is perfect but because it flows. Heraclitus once said, "The Ephesians should hang themselves, every one of them, and leave the city to the young, for they have banished Hermodorus, the best among them." It is a harsh saying, yet beneath it burns the sorrow of truth, the pain of a man who loved wisdom but saw it rejected by his own people. Ephesus was a city of splendor and pride. Its temples were vast, its harbor rich, its citizens proud of their prosperity. Yet, like so many cities, it did not listen. It celebrated success and silenced the voice that spoke of balance, humility, and truth. And so Heraclitus withdrew, not in hatred but in sorrow. He had watched his people drive out Hermodorus, a man of virtue and understanding, simply because his goodness made them feel small. Heraclitus saw in that act the sickness of the human heart, that we often cast out the very light that could heal us. It is easier to despise wisdom than to change for it. And so he turned away, choosing solitude over the noise of those who no longer cared to listen. I too have seen this blindness in my own city. Athens, in her glory, boasts of freedom and reason, yet how quick she is to close her ears when the truth begins to sting. I know well how dangerous it is to speak what others do not wish to hear. The city loves flattery more than honesty. It rewards comfort and punishes questioning. And when one stands before the crowd and speaks of virtue or simplicity, they call him a fool, or worse, a threat. Heraclitus' story is not just his own. It is the story of every thinker who has ever stood before the multitude and found silence where understanding should be. For the crowd listens not to truth, but to its own echo. It praises those who mirror its desires and turns away from those who challenge its peace. Yet even as the city rejected him, Heraclitus did not curse it. He understood that ignorance is not evil, it is simply unawakened. He once said, "The waking have one common world, but the sleeping turn aside each into a world of his own." The people of Ephesus were not wicked. They were asleep, dreaming of power, of wealth, of their own greatness. And in their dreaming, they could not hear the soft voice of the Logos speaking through him. There is a loneliness that comes to those who see too clearly. It is the loneliness of walking through a crowd and feeling the distance between what is and what could be. Heraclitus knew that loneliness well. He walked through his city as one walks through fog, seeing the shapes of men, hearing their laughter, but unable to be reached by them. For his eyes were fixed not on the marketplace, but on the eternal fire behind it. Still, I do not think he despised them. His words were stern, but his heart was not cruel. He saw their blindness as part of the great balance. For without the sleeping, how would the wakeful know their task? Without ignorance, how could wisdom shine? Even the city that does not listen has its place in the harmony of all things. I often think of that when I stand in the agora and see men argue over trivial things. It would be easy to mock them or to despair as Heraclitus did. But I choose instead to listen, for sometimes even among the noise, a spark of truth flickers. A question spoken softly, a doubt unvoiced, a glance of sincerity. These are signs that even in the city that does not listen, the Logos has not fallen silent. Perhaps Heraclitus' mistake, if he had one, was not that he withdrew, but that he lost hope in the awakening of others. Yet even his retreat served its purpose. His silence became a mirror for the ages. The words he left behind still speak where the crowd could not. His fire still burns even among those who once turned away. So, my friend, if you ever feel unheard, if your truth finds no ear in the world, remember Heraclitus. Remember that wisdom does not depend on being received. The sun does not cease to shine because men close their shutters. Speak softly if you must, or walk in quiet, but do not let your flame go out. For every city that refuses to listen today will one day seek the light it once rejected. And perhaps, somewhere beyond the walls of Ephesus, Heraclitus smiled through his sorrow, knowing that time itself would become his listener, that the Logos he served would speak through centuries, long after the noise of his city had faded into dust. Heraclitus taught that all things exist in pairs, that life and death, day and night, joy and sorrow are not enemies but companions. He said, "The road up and the road down are one and the same." To many those words sound like riddles, but to those who listen deeply they are music. He meant that opposites are bound together in a sacred union, that one gives birth to the other and neither can exist alone. Without night there can be no dawn, without sorrow there can be no joy. Every light casts a shadow, and every shadow proves the presence of light. To Heraclitus, this was not a tragedy but a law of beauty, the secret harmony by which the cosmos breathes. I have watched this truth unfold throughout my own life. When I was young, I believed happiness was to be pursued and pain avoided. But time, the old teacher, revealed that the two are inseparable, each shaping the other like the two hands of a sculptor. It is through the pressure of loss that the soul learns gentleness, and through moments of joy that it learns gratitude. Together they carve the wisdom of being. Heraclitus said that war is the father of all things. He did not mean the clashing of swords or the grief of bloodshed, but the eternal tension between forces, between heat and cold, hunger and fullness, motion and stillness. This tension is not chaos, it is creation. As the bow must be drawn to shoot, so must the world stretch itself in opposites to give life its motion. The fire burns because air resists it. The river flows because the banks contain it. Even the soul burns brightly only when tested by the winds of struggle. That is why Heraclitus saw balance not in stillness but in rhythm, a ceaseless motion of giving and receiving, of rising and falling, of becoming and letting go. When I teach, I often tell my students to look beyond the surface of conflict. What appears to be opposition is often cooperation in disguise. The string and the frame of the lyre pull against each other, but from that strain comes harmony. The heart beats by contracting and releasing. Life itself depends on tension and release. So too does the world. To live wisely is not to flee from this tension but to dance with it. To feel pain and not call it evil. To know joy and not cling to it. Both are movements of the same eternal current, the flow that Heraclitus called fire. Sometimes when I sit by the sea and watch the waves roll in, I see how they crash and calm in the same breath. The wave's rise is not separate from its fall. Both are part of one rhythm. And so it is with us. We rise and fall in moods, in fortune, in strength, yet the deeper ocean, the soul, remains whole beneath it all. Heraclitus would have smiled at this, for he saw that even death, which men fear, is but one face of life. What dies returns as nourishment for what is born. What ends here begins elsewhere. The opposites do not destroy each other, they trade places in a sacred cycle. He once said, "The hidden harmony is better than the obvious." He meant that the world's balance is not always seen in the calm of things, but in their struggle. A storm may seem disorderly, but it clears the air. A fire may seem cruel, but it renews the forest. Even in the turmoil of human life, in heartbreak, failure, or loss, there is a hidden restoration at work. If you can see this, truly see it, the heart grows quiet. You no longer curse the night, for you know it carries the morning within it. You no longer fear change, for you understand that every ending is a new beginning in disguise. And so peace is not found in escaping life's opposites, but in embracing them. In seeing that the fire and the ash, the seed and the soil, the joy and the tear, are all one great unfolding. So tonight, as you rest, you may let go of your resistance to what has been and what will be. The road that seems to go downward is also the road that climbs upward. You need only keep walking. For in the meeting of opposites, in the dance of light and shadow, lies the balance of all things. The quiet truth that Heraclitus saw blazing in the heart of the world. Heraclitus saw time not as a line, but as a circle. To him, nothing truly began and nothing ever ended. Everything was part of an eternal cycle, a divine rhythm of birth, death, and renewal. He said, "The fire lives the death of earth, and air lives the death of fire." By this, he meant that everything transforms into its opposite, yet the whole remains unchanged, life feeding upon death and death feeding new life. When I watch the seasons, I understand him. Spring unfolds like a new thought, bold and bright. Summer burns with life's full flame. Autumn softens it into reflection, and winter folds it back into silence. Yet each season carries the others within it. The snow holds the memory of flowers. The seed carries the promise of bloom. Nothing is lost, nothing wasted. All is returned, reimagined, reborn. So it is with us. When we lose what we love, we think it is gone forever. But Heraclitus would say, no, it has only changed its form. The love that once filled your days now lives as tenderness, as memory, as wisdom. The laughter that echoed once in your youth still sings in the hearts of others who carry your spirit forward. Everything moves, yet nothing disappears. When I was young, I feared death. I imagined it as a wall, the end of the journey. But as I grew older and listened more deeply to the world, I began to see that death is not a wall at all, but a turning of the wheel. The same sun that sets here rises elsewhere. The same soul that departs here awakens in another form of being. To die is to return, to become again part of the great flame that has no beginning and no end. Heraclitus' fire never goes out. It burns and transforms endlessly, consuming and creating in equal measure. He said, "The world was, is, and shall be ever-living fire." That is the secret of the eternal cycle. A universe in motion, forever renewing itself, forever young in its change. Look around you even now in stillness. The world you see is not fixed. The air shifts, the dust glimmers, the shadows lengthen and fade. You are not the same as you were a moment ago. Even as you lie here listening, cells die and are reborn, thoughts pass like clouds, and the breath of life moves gently through you. You are part of this eternal turning, not apart from it, but within it, as the wave is within the ocean. This is why Heraclitus spoke of peace in the midst of change. He did not resist the turning of the world. He bowed to it. He saw that eternity is not found beyond life, but within it, in the endless becoming of all things. The fire that burns today becomes the light of tomorrow. The ashes that fall today become the soil of future growth. The circle has no break, only transformation. To understand this is to lose the fear of loss. For once you know that everything returns, that nothing vanishes, that even pain will one day become compassion, the heart can rest. You realize that you are not falling through time, but moving with it. You are not being carried away by change. You are the change itself, the living flame of the eternal. Sometimes I walk among the graves outside the city walls. The names are fading, the stones worn smooth by wind and rain. But the grass grows thick there, and wildflowers bloom in colors that would make any painter envious. The dead feed the beauty of the living, and the living one day will feed the beauty yet to come. It is not a cycle to be feared, but a song to be joined. So tonight, as you breathe, know that your breath is part of this same rhythm. Each inhalation is a birth, each exhalation a gentle death, and between them the miracle of being. You have always been here, and you always will be, though in forms the mind cannot yet imagine. Heraclitus saw this truth not as mystery but as comfort. That nothing ends, only changes. That the fire of the world burns on, reshaping itself forever. And that to rest within that flame, calm, accepting, and awake, is to live in harmony with eternity. Heraclitus believed that truth is not something one can simply explain. He said, "Nature loves to hide." By this, he meant that the essence of things, the logos, the quiet order that governs all, does not reveal itself through argument or speech. It reveals itself in silence, in observation, in the still attention of the heart. When I was young, I thought wisdom lived in words. I believed that to speak clearly was to understand deeply. But as the years passed, I discovered that some truths grow quieter the more we talk about them. There are moments when the soul knows what the tongue cannot say, when a look, a breath, a pause contains more meaning than any sentence could hold. Heraclitus understood this long before any of us. His words were few, but each burned with hidden fire. He did not lecture, he hinted. He did not explain, he evoked. He spoke like the flame itself, flickering, alive, refusing to be trapped. And so, those who sought simple answers called him dark. But perhaps he was not dark. Perhaps it was our eyes that were dim. I have come to believe that the highest wisdom is felt rather than spoken. It is like the warmth of the sun on your skin. You do not need to describe it to know that it is real. It is like the stillness of dawn when the first light touches the hills. The world says nothing, yet all is understood. Heraclitus might have said that the soul learns best not through teaching, but through seeing. When you look upon a flame long enough, you stop thinking about fire and start feeling its life. When you listen to the sea, you no longer analyze the sound, you become part of its rhythm. This is how understanding blooms without words. The mind, clever and quick, seeks to capture truth to define it. But truth, like fire, changes shape the moment we grasp it. The more tightly we hold our thoughts, the less we feel the living breath behind them. So the wise learn to loosen their minds, to let thoughts come and go, until only awareness remains, calm, clear, simple. When I sit in silence, I often hear things that no ear could catch. The faint hum of life beneath all sounds, the rhythm of breath aligning with the world's quiet pulse, the feeling that I am not separate from what I observe. In that stillness, understanding dawns without effort. Heraclitus would call this seeing through the eyes of the soul. He believed that the logos is not something far away to be discovered, but something already within us, waiting to be recognized. The task is not to speak it, but to remember it. There are times, my friend, when silence teaches more than 1,000 words. When the mind rests and the heart listens, the world becomes transparent. The rustle of leaves, the flicker of light on water, the slow fading of day, all whisper the same truth, that everything belongs and nothing stands apart. When I taught in the agora, I would often pause mid-sentence and let silence fall. At first, my students grew restless. They waited for the next word, the next lesson. But then, as the quiet deepened, their faces softened, and their eyes began to see differently. The lesson had already arrived, not from me but from within them. They were beginning to understand without words. Tonight, as you listen, you too may feel that understanding rising, not in the mind but in the space beneath it. Let your thoughts slow until they dissolve into the hum of the present. Let your breath move gently, in rhythm with the invisible fire of life. Do not search for meaning, simply be. For in the stillness of being, the truth reveals itself. Heraclitus knew that when the tongue falls silent, the soul begins to speak. That is the sacred moment when the listener becomes one with what is heard, the observer becomes one with what is seen. There are no divisions then, no questions, no words, only presence. And in that presence lies the wisdom that Heraclitus cherished most. That to understand the world, one must stop trying to explain it, and simply become quiet enough to feel it breathing. As the night deepens and the fire burns low, I think again of Heraclitus, the philosopher of becoming, the watcher of the eternal flame. He saw what few men ever see, that the same fire that shapes the stars burns also within the heart, and that the soul's truest peace is not found in stillness, but in flowing with the rhythm of all things. He taught that the world is ever-living fire, transforming, consuming, creating, endlessly renewing itself. And though he spoke in riddles, his message was simple. To live wisely is to live in harmony with change. To resist is to suffer. To accept is to be free. I have carried his thought with me through the years, through the noise of the city, the laughter of the young, the silence of the prison walls. Each moment I have seen the same lesson reflected back. Nothing stays, yet nothing is lost. Each day fades like a spark, but the fire goes on. When I watch the dawn break over Athens, I feel his spirit in the light. The night does not die, it simply turns into day. The darkness retreats, but not in defeat. It becomes part of the glow that awakens the world. And so it is with us. Our sorrows turn into wisdom, our mistakes into strength, our endings into beginnings. The flame within us never vanishes. It changes its shape and continues its song. Heraclitus believed that understanding this truth could bring serenity to any soul. For when we stop clinging to what must change, we stop fearing what comes next. We see that every breath, every moment, is already perfect in its impermanence. We no longer chase eternity, we realize we are already inside it. Even now, as the fire of my own life burns lower, I find comfort in his vision. I do not ask the flame to last forever. I am grateful that it has burned at all. Its warmth has touched others, its light has guided my path, and when it fades, it will feed another fire somewhere in another heart in another time. That is the way of things. Heraclitus once said, "The sun is new each day." And though the sun seems the same, each sunrise is born from the ashes of yesterday. So too are we, renewed in every breath, reborn in every moment of awareness. You listening now are not who you were when you began this night. The world has moved through you. The fire has spoken to you in its quiet way. You have changed as all things do, and that is the sign that you are alive. So rest now, not in the hope that time will stop, but in the knowing that it will go on, and that you are part of its endless motion. The fire within you does not end with sleep. It glows softly, keeping watch through the night. Even in dreams, it listens to the logos, to the eternal law that guides all things home. Breathe gently. Let the air enter and leave as freely as the tides. You do not need to hold it, it will return. You do not need to fear the dark, it will give birth to light again. You do not need to grasp at life, for you are life itself, the eternal fire taking form for a little while. When the morning comes and you wake to the song of the world, remember what Heraclitus taught, that beneath every change there is harmony, that within every ending there is beginning, and that in your own heart, quietly, eternally burns the same flame that lights the cosmos. So sleep peacefully, my friend. Let the quiet flame within you burn steady and kind. You are part of the living fire. You are the rhythm of becoming. You are the harmony of opposites, the dream of the logos made real. And in that knowing, deep, gentle, eternal, may you find your rest.